Welcome back to The Purple Worm, a group podcast with 4 British blokes talking about all things RPG. And continuing our recent theme of myths and legends, we're going to be looking at ghost stories and hauntings this episode. And I'm going to be highlighting a few local legends from my area. So, let's crack on with that. Every town's got stories about like hauntings and ghosts and stuff like that. Now, my own hometown of Burton, where I live, was obviously quite big when sort of brewing was like a massive industry, but it's sort of tapered off a bit now, and there's lots of like abandoned buildings and stuff. And obviously with abandoned buildings, we had like an abbey in Burton, like one of the last abbeys in Burton, like the Abbey of St Modwyn and stuff like that, which has got legends associated with it. And there's supposed to be something ridiculous like 250 sort of reports of different hauntings, and obviously I'm not going to go through all 250, but I've got a few of them noted down here. So there's the ghost of Friars Walk School, which is an old, now abandoned building, and randomly I actually went to a war games club that was held there sort of like way back years ago. And it's supposed to be that an old headmaster, Reverend Green, is supposed to haunt part of the town centre in the sort of streets around there, which is like smack bang in the centre of town. We're also supposedly, I don't know how true this is, but supposedly the last Christian martyr to be burned alive in England came from Burton. And there's one of these like micro pubs in Burton now called like the Last Heretic, which refers to that legend. And then we've got numerous legends about sort of ghost monks and priests and stuff like that associated with the old like abbey site, which was obviously during the dissolution of the monasteries, that was all sort of torn down. But one of the things I always like about the sort of like the ghost stories is they're a nice way of sort of taking part of like the past, of like the history of a place, and sort of colliding it with the present, if you will. So I think in an RPG context, which is more interesting, if I'm sort of there and I'm like, oh yeah, you're a priest, you know that in such and such a year that the last martyr was burned alive in this town, and they were dragged through to the town square and they were burnt alive, and I just tell you that. Or is it more interesting that you see this spectral procession sort of heading through the centre of the town, and you see like a sort of ghost version of this guy being burnt alive, and right. I don't really tell it. It's again, it's that sort of show don't tell, isn't it? You're actually showing, even if the ghosts don't interact with you, it's just like a replay of historical events. It's more interesting, and then you can go about and investigate it yourself if you want to. But if you don't want to, you can just leave it alone, rather than me just having you sit there while I talk at you for 10 minutes and tell you what the history of my setting is.
I've got my own ghost story.
Oh, go on then.
I don't often tell this, but years ago I used to as you know, I was a copper, long retired, and when we were working on the night shift, I used to work in a village station, and I used to work on my own. And at midnight we used to meet up in one of the sister stations, and we go there, and about 4 or 5 of us would meet there, and we'd have a brew and a chocolate bar and have a natter and go on our ways. And we always used to meet at midnight, so I go down to this old police station in Rabin. It's no longer a police station now. And let myself in, and I'm sitting there waiting for the lads to come, and I heard the back door go, and I heard the footsteps coming towards me, and I said, "All right, lads." No one replied. I thought, yeah, okay, funny. All right, lads. And the footsteps stopped. So I went to look. No sign of them. So I searched every room in the building. No sign of them. I went to the back door. I opened the back door. The cars weren't there. Nobody there at all. I thought, this can't be right. And then about 20 minutes later, the lads returned back. So I said, "Have you been playing a joke on me?" "No, I've no idea what you're on about." I said, "Well, I heard the back door go, and I heard the footsteps." "Oh, that'll be Henry." "What do you mean, Henry?" "Oh, it's Henry the ghost." I said, "What do you mean a ghost? There's no such thing as ghosts." "Oh yeah, things get moved around, and we've all heard him, or things have fallen off." And then that was that. Anyway, years later, the police station was sold, and a mate of mine, he worked for the council, and he went up to the council had taken over the police station, and he said, "Oh, this used to be a police station, you know." And I said, "Oh yeah, we know." He said, "Does anything strange happen around here? Funny you should mention it," they said. And they started telling these stories of strange things that had happened. But I mean, I never believed in ghosts until that day, and I can't explain it. Who knows? Do they exist?
It's one of those interesting things as well, where you sort of telling that story, it seems far eerier than if you'd gone like, "Oh, I walked around a corner and I actually saw like a ghost," because then you're like, much as it would have been horrifying at the time, we'd be like, we all sort of roughly understand what a ghost is, whereas it's almost the sort of like the fear of the unknown is worse than if you actually saw anything, because as we were talking about earlier, your own mind can sort of fill in those gaps.
Well, that's what the old horror films used to do, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It would leave the imagination of the watcher. You didn't see the gore, it just implied it, and that was far worse than actually seeing it.
Well, yeah, I mean, how many of the sort of like the old films before they had like big budgets and stuff like that, where would you, in the old sort of like Quatermass sort of style films, that someone would get killed off camera, and all you'd hear is like a blood-curdling scream as whatever horrible, no doubt, sort of globular sort of creature had killed them. And obviously partly that was because they didn't have the budget to actually show the creature killing them and whatever, and obviously the rating for that film would have gone up massively if they had done. But I always think it was almost worse, because you could imagine far more horrible things occurring to that person than they could have ever actually shown on the screen, even with a massive budget.
Yeah, I mean, that's why your story of Reverend Green don't scare me, John, because I know exactly what happened to Reverend Green. He got killed with a lead pipe in the library.
He's a murderer. Yeah.
Well, you should know. You're related to him, so.
Yeah, no uncle, yeah.
But all right, then, if that one doesn't scare you, let me tell you about the crying babies of Cherry Orchard, which is also a local legend.
Oh, that sounds nasty.
Now, don't know how true this is, but we have there's sort of like there's like a remembrance gardens like that was planted like after the Second World War in Burton, and there's a copse of trees nearby that are known as Cherry Orchard. And I remember hearing this when I was like at school, and sort of like people like chatting about this. And legend has it there was a cult that used to, sort of back in bygone days, they used to sacrifice children by throwing them down a well that was in this Cherry Orchard area. Now, as far as I remember, because I've been in this area, there isn't actually a well there. But as with most of these stories, I've heard it from so many different people who are like absolutely convinced that like this is true, and there's apparently a tunnel running from this well that runs under a place, and they used to meet in sort of underground chambers under this tunnel and whatever. And it was always sort of like, oh, that they're active around the solstices and Halloween, and if you go there at those times, you know, you can still hear like the cries of their victims echoing from this well that doesn't exist. But it almost got to that point where it's such a sort of local legend, although it's fallen off a bit now. But I remember when I was younger, even though you could go to this place, you could look and go, there is no well here, there's no evidence any has been ever filled in, secret tunnels, can't prove no, but seems a little bit unlikely. But it's so widespread that it's almost sort of taken on a legend of its own. And you're sure, like, oh yeah, a lot of people would be like, oh yeah, I heard like a wailing through like the trees when I was there near the solstice, and you were like, oh, was that on that particularly windy night as you were standing amidst the trees? but I still remember like hearing people when I was younger sort of swearing that they'd heard like children crying and stuff like that when they've been going past there, sort of around about Halloween and stuff like that. So these legends, they do sort of take on a bit of a life of their own, and the actual like truth or sort of evidence almost becomes like a secondary consideration.
And I wonder how many pubs made the legends and ghost stories up about their premises to get more punters to the door, looking for it.
But I mean, one of the ones I want to talk about later, Spring Heel Jack, that sort of became popular around about the time that like penny dreadfuls were becoming popular in the Victorian age. It was when, you know, they first started having like mass marketed sort of readable media for like the common person. And obviously that did a great deal to like codify and spread these sort of like legends which had all been like passed on verbally. And
it's a meme.
Exactly, yeah. And I mean, you only have to look at how many of those like ridiculous like ghost detective like shows that there are on various TV programs nowadays, or like you say, internet memes being like a sort of latest form of that, of sort of passing on the essential bits of these information. So I think even those sort of legends are often seen as something that's of the past. You know, it's an old tradition. I think they're really still with us. They've just sort of like, as they've always done, they've just sort of adapted and changed, and they're now presented in different ways.
And a lot of authors have used these myths and legends for their books, haven't they?
Of course, yeah.
If you think of like the Solomon Kane books, I mean, he goes around fighting myths and legends around the world. And as an author, you can just take these myths and legends, and as we're going to say now, that you can use these myths and legends to populate your game. Why invent something else?
And the kids are passing around new stuff now, of course. I mean, you should get my kids started on Slender Man. They will give you origin story after origin story about this character, Slender Man, who is as I can understand, a relatively new sort of internet horror creation. But they're fascinated by him, and they've heard dozens of different origin stories for him. They'll tell you all about them. Yeah, quite fascinating.
I like the layers that you get with these stories. Just going back to the well, something I've used in RPGs is the revelation that something was covered up and then it comes to light. So, like, they've built those memorial gardens, say, and then you've had a sudden downfall of rain, or you've had some minor earthquake or something, and something gets revealed, of course, and everybody then goes, "Oh yeah, now we get it. Yeah, they said about these kids being sacrificed in a well, but it didn't make a lot of sense because there was not a well." And then, oh, lo and behold, well, there's the well. Well.
Pet cemetery type stuff.
Yeah. It is a classic. And to be fair, if they was, say, in that example, they were building this memorial garden, you didn't need the well anymore. Probably a good time to get it covered over when you're building that memorial garden. So I bet it wouldn't take much digging around to actually establish whether that well was there on the record,
Well, that's it. I mean, Dave was talking about Slender Man. If I remember correctly, that was actually a creepypasta originally.
That's it. Yeah.
Which are like sort of short little horror stories that are sort of made and are like posted on the internet and shared around.
Yeah, but I mean the origin of it is almost trivially relevant now. Mm-hmm. I mean, because it has a life of its own. As I say, my children will give you. They don't know anything about that. But they'll give you 6 different origin stories for Slender Man. That's the point I'm making. That it's way past that now. It is in their imaginary. It is part of their mythology now. And I mean, and that's actually the point that Eric Maple makes about the witches. That probably it goes back to this one story about this spectral apparition riding around on a hurdle and crossing a river in a washtub. But 200 years later, that's irrelevant. I mean, it's in the imaginary.
It does make me wonder why anybody would go out and actually buy an RPG product, really.
You take that back, Colin.
What do you mean? Yeah, what do you mean?
We got authors here. You're doing the amount of money.
There's so much. There's so much out there, isn't it? Why would you actually turn to RPG adventures, even if they're free?
I think personally, for me, I mean, one of the things I look for in a book. I mean, I've got a lot of the GURPS, like historical supplements. Now, I don't run GURPS, however, all of those books are very well researched, but they present the information because they know they're presenting to role players. They present it in a way so the stuff you want to get at first as a role player or as like a GM is like what they focus their attention on. So I think for me, a good, for argument's sake, sort of role play supplement is something that can draw on real life stuff, but it never forgets that it need to present it in a way that's usable in your game. Whereas obviously a lot of these books have been talking about lore of the land, stuff like that. They are just presenting the tales. Now, obviously, you can, as a GM, you can take those tales, you can work them into something that you can use in your game, you can weave them in, of course you can. But the particularly if you're like a time poor GM, is that having a good roleplay book means that sort of bit of it's done for you.
Yeah, and I understand that, but quite often them roleplay game books have a load of additional detail that you've then got to wade through, whereas maybe like something like say the Fabled Coast there, that one paragraph and I'm away with some pretty original thought. I wonder if sometimes by going to the RPG books first, we're somehow stifling our inspiration and our creativity a little bit.
I think it's an interesting point. I mean, I think now all of us as like relatively experienced GMs, I think you're absolutely right. We could pick up a book about myths and legends. We could take what we want from it fairly easily. We could put it into our game, no problems. However, I think if it had been me from like the first year or two when I'd first started GMing, I wouldn't have had the confidence to just take it and just like put it into a game. Whereas going like, this is already a game book, it sort of gave me the comfort. I mean, let's say maybe it's
kind of official. It's official.
Yeah, it gave me that confidence. So I'm like, oh, this is RPG content. I can just use.
And I'd say that about the GURPS books. I'm mixed about them because I've got loads of them and I've enjoyed flicking through them. But yeah, I think the thing is, they're not scholarship.
No,
they're not. I mean, we often credit them with excellent scholarship, but that's not their real virtue. Their real virtue is a work of translation. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They've managed to encapsulate something in the kinds of terms that you, as a gamer, want them in. So these are the kinds of capabilities. Whether you're going to use them for this system or another system, these are the kinds of capabilities that this class, faction, category will have. Do you know what I mean? And they chop things up into those gameable, chunks that you need. But then, I mean, they're categorically not valuable for their scholarship. I don't think.
Oh no, I mean,
it's that particular genre, that particular work of translation that they affect. Which
the way I like to look at it is, it's like let's say you wanted to buy a piece of furniture, like a chair for your house. Now, if you've got the right skills and you know how to do it, you could easily go out, select a piece of wood, cut it down, sand it, put it together, varnish it, polish it, make a lovely chair for your home. However, if you've not got those particular skills, it's probably better for you, or certainly quicker and easier, if you go to a furniture shop and you find a chair you like, you buy it, you can put it straight in your room, you're good to go. Maybe if you're a bit more confident, or you're trying to save, like say, save a bit of money, because RPG books aren't cheap. Maybe you go to like a sort of IKEA place where you get some of like the self-assembly stuff, where you have to do like a little bit of the work putting it together. But I would say you would have to have both the confidence and the skills just to go out, look at a tree and go, right, I'm going to take some wood from that tree and I'm going to make myself a chair. And that's sort of the way I see the roleplay products. If you've got the confidence and the experience, I'm sure we all could just go to one of these books and just go, right, I'm going to pull this little bit out of it, I'm going to ignore that bit I don't want, I'm going to put it straight into my game, boom, let's go. But I think when you're starting out, it's a nice sort of easy sort of in if you've got like a roleplay book that's sort of done some of the work for you.
I definitely understand that. It's just that I wonder about that filter, because there's a filtering going on, because they're assuming they know what it is that you need to know and stuff. There's quite a lot of assumptions going on, so you're getting fed stuff. And part of the reason that I started thinking about this was I was reading about Victorian London, and in a whole big book, one of the things that really stood out to me was the fact that when they were putting together Nelson's column, they had a train of 20 horses to pull some of the stone. And I thought to myself, I've never heard of 20 horses being used for anything. It blew my mind. I thought, could you imagine like just the spectacle of 20 horses dragging up bits of stone to build this thing? And I just wonder, would you get that in an RPG product, or would that just be a little detail that they thought wasn't necessary? Because different little details capture different people's minds. You could have read that book and never seen that, or you might have latched onto it like me, and I just wonder.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And let's not forget, now I'm going to hammer GURPS just because it's a sport that I have, and that's going to create lots of controversy. But it's often, I mean, those GURPS source books, of which I have many and I like flicking through them, they're often referred to, so not always, but they're often referred to as one of the virtues of GURPS. Whatever you think about the system, they had these wonderful source books which are rich with detail. Let's not forget, GURPS needed them because what you needed in GURPS, it wasn't about the research, all those wonderful details that Colin's talking about. You need to know that kind of stuff. It was just that if you wanted to play it in any setting, you had to do a massive work of translation. It was not nearly as generic and universal as it made out, because you always needed to go, okay, I need stats for the particular weapons of this setting. Okay, I need the particular spells that sorcerers are going to do here. Okay, I need the particular combat maneuvers that people can do. So you had these immense works of application of the rules, which the source books did for you. And that just amuses me. That often people say, well, I don't like GURPS much, but I liked the source books. You only needed the source books because of the nature of the system. It's immensely crunchy system that had to be translated for any of the settings that you wanted to apply this universal system to.
What a good earner for the company, though.
Well, I mean, and they did sell, and that's the thing which I find hard to understand about GURPS. But it's huge. I mean, they made all those source books. Yeah,
because I mean, very much to support what you're saying, Dave. I looked at probably a few years ago now. I looked at the GURPS Zombies book, which is like of the most recent edition, and it's basically your big book of all things zombie apocalypse. And I remember looking at it and flicking through it, going, I wonder if I'll buy this. And as I flicked through it, I was like, there's not really anything in there that I don't know from having watched a ridiculous number of zombie films. And I was like, I just put it back on the shelf. I was like, no, I don't need it.
Right. I haven't seen it, but I bet you've got here's your stats for a fast zombie. Here's your stats for a slow zombie.
All your weapons.
Here's different ways of fighting zombies. Yeah, here's the different ways you can kill a zombie. Here's all your maneuvers. On and on and on. Which when I was much younger, I loved that. I've talked a while back. I had an interaction with Jason about this, Jason Nerds, on my podcast, where he was saying, look, when you're a bit younger, you're all about the crunch. You love the crunch. You can't get enough crunch. You absorb one book of crunch, and then you just want another book of crunch. Whereas now, I just cannot see. I just find it cynical marketing. And I don't want any crunch. I want to do exactly what Colin says. I want to be fascinated by something in a book or something I've watched on TV. I want to pull that immediately into my session next week. I don't have to worry about anything apart from injecting that cool idea.
I think that came across with your podcast, Colin, with your lad, when he wanted more, didn't he? Where you'd cut back and I want more crunch. I want more detail.
Yeah, he definitely likes that.
I think that's the thing with the younger brain. It's learning, isn't it? And it wants more information.
They're soaking stuff up.
Well, it can. I mean, you see an 8-year-old and they know all the dinosaurs. The 10-year-old's read all the Harry Potter and he knows it inside out. They want that stuff. They can. And then when you get crunchy brains.
When you get to my age, my brain's full and think, well, if I'm going to learn that, I've got to throw something else out because I've got no more capacity.
Yeah. It's just like my bookshelf. My bookshelf's full. I've decided I'm not going to put up another shelf or get any more bookshelves. I will have to deal with the books I've got.
Must be terrible for you, Colin. Must be terrible for you, mate.
Yeah, I know, because I know you're not a big fan of bookshelves.
I'm not, mate. I can't even look at a book, mate.
No, you got way too much discipline for endless buying of books.
Yeah. To be fair, much I've got.
If you're an audio listener, John is sat in front of a massive shelf load of books.
The worst thing is, Colin, you can't see. There's like 3 massive piles on the floor.
I still reckon when he's finished doing up his garage, there'll be a few bookshelves in there as well.
Oh no, there won't. My wife's banned me from putting any books in there. Although I may have earmarked some space in the little room that's currently full of all the stuff that's going in the garage. So.
It's great, and as I'm looking across the shelves, I can see 4th edition D&D. I can see a load of GURPS supplements. I can see a children's Encyclopedia Britannica.
Yep.
I can see a load of 19th century pornography. It's all there. It's all there. It's a wonderful collection. Yeah. A lot of Dan Brown. He's got all the Harry Potters.
The weird thing is, I actually have, but they're on a shelf outside the room.
I'm joking. And Bibles. He's got 23 different translations of the Bible. That is impressive.
See, I do have to confess that I do only own one Bible, and it's a children's illustrated Bible that I've had since I was about 3. Okay, so we have again, it's been on the sort of Twitch chat before as like the best name as far as I'm concerned, Saggy Jello 89. So, Saggy Jello. Well, it happens when you get older. It happens to the best of us. But they're saying that another great creepypasta collection is the SCP Foundation, sort of a Men in Black agency which holds and hides entities.
It's a cracking site if you've not been on it. I don't know if any of you been on that, but basically it's like a bit like a Wikipedia that anybody can add to. And what they do is people put up sort of like fake X-Files stories there, but they redact parts of it, and it's a cracking resource if you're doing like a sci-fi or a horror game. It really is. Great article. Yeah.
The one I discovered was these warlocks or something, warlock wiki or something like that, and it was hippie trails or something like that, and it was, I was checking out the local site just down the road from me. Really interesting, and I kind of think we could do multiple episodes on myths and legends and stuff. It could almost be like a little shtick, because it's such a rich vein.
It's taken us 2 hours to do 2 of them.
There you go.
I'll get
surprise.
I'd love to get my kids on that stuff, like Slender Man, which you guys know the origin of. It's not too many years ago, but I'd love to get my kids on to explain what their network of beliefs looks like around that, like what that's become in their imaginary. Is quite fascinating. It's quite fascinating.
And it's super ripe for RPG inspiration as well, man.
Yeah. But sometimes they take the myth and they ruin it. They change it completely.
I think that's just the nature of the beast, isn't it, really?
Well, that's it. And that's what I'm going to talk about, the much maligned kobolds and how D&D wrecked.
And I'm afraid you'll have to wait till next week's episode to hear Pete telling us all about kobolds and how D&D ruined them, because that's it for this episode. We hope if you've enjoyed it, you'll consider dropping us a voicemail on the Anchor app, or you can leave us an email, purplewormpodcast@gmail.com. So, from myself, Dave, Colin and Pete, it's goodbye for now. And until we see you next time, have fun whatever you're playing and watch out for those purple worms. Take care.